Welcome to this edition of the Ventura County Coastal Association of Realtors Legislative Lens podcast. I'm your host, Rob Leatherwood, and with us today is the Ventura Chamber of Commerce CEO, Stephanie Caldwell. Thanks for joining us, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. It's a lot going on in Ventura, so we got a lot to talk about, so we'll get right to it. Starting with, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do. I think if I remember right, you're like me. You're not originally from Ventura, but you're trying hard to be a natural Venturan. Tell us a little bit about your story and what brought you to Ventura.
Sure. So I came to Ventura about 9 years ago, in fact, almost exactly 9 years ago, to take this job. And I had previously spent time in Ventura and Ojai, had some family that lived up in Ojai, and so I had been familiar with the beautiful location of Ventura, and about 9 years ago, I had the opportunity to come here and take this job, and I fell into it. It certainly wasn't something I was seeking out, but
hey, that happened to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when it happened, it was like, huh. And at first, I wasn't sure. I was like, I'm happy in my job. I lived up in the Bay Area. I had been the COO of the San Jose Silicon Valley Chamber of Commerce for about 10 and a half years. And, cruising along, happy in my job. My whole family lived up there. This opportunity came available, and every opportunity I had to talk with the people in Ventura and at the chamber, I fell more and more in love with it. And so by the end, when they offered me the job, it was a no-brainer. I just took it and moved down, and best decision I ever made. Love it here.
Basically, my story is exactly the same. So I definitely feel everything that you're talking about. Since you've been here for 9 years and change, what is the thing that you love most about Ventura?
Wow. It's hard to pinpoint one thing. Of course, I love the beaches. Of course, I love the easy access to everything, how easy it is to get around. But I really think it's the community. Ventura is not a small town, but we have kind of that small town feel. We have the perfect kind of marriage of the new and the old. We're very close to LA. We're close to Santa Barbara. Of course, we can look out at the beach every day. The first probably 5 years I was here, I drove that California Street on-ramp to the 101. And, you go over that curve. And as soon as the ocean comes into view, I couldn't wipe the smile off my face. It was just amazing to me that I had to pinch myself. I live here,
No, it's wild. And the flip side of it is, too, sometimes you're like looking out your windshield and you see the beach, and then in your mirrors you can see the mountains behind you, and you're like, is this place even
is it
real?
Possible? Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's
so
awesome.
Yeah, so I do love that. I love just the cozy aspect of Ventura, but really it's the community. You feel connected. Your neighbors. You go out, downtown, and you run into people. It's just a very connected community.
It is. It's wonderful. It's warm. The weather's perfect. The people are great. But that doesn't mean we're not without our challenges.
Absolutely.
And, one of the major challenges that we have here in Ventura County and across California, but, we're focused on Ventura County and in this conversation, Ventura specifically, is our housing issues. And this is a chronic issue. This didn't pop up last week or last year. This has been ongoing. It is the inevitable downstream effect of not building anything for decades. So you drive around and you see things being built, you see development happening, but you have for like a few years now, but we still have these shortages of housing for people, and particularly on the low end of the cost spectrum. Walk us through how we are seeing all these things being built, but we still don't have enough for everyone. How does that work?
Yeah, well, you're right. It started a long time ago, and it's really decades of policy that have suppressed housing development here in Ventura and really Ventura County. And so when we see a lot of these projects that are being built that are actually sticks and grounds right in the ground right now, those were approved in some cases almost a decade ago, or going through the process. One of the most recent larger communities that came online, Portside, which is out at the harbor, it took 19 years to go through the entitlement process.
What is going on there? Why does it take so long to get through this process?
Yeah.
And what are the consequences of that lengthy process for developers?
Wow, how much time do we have?
All the time you need.
So, what takes, first of all, the first question is kind of why, right? So years ago, when I came here 9 years ago, the number one issue that my board gave to me is this housing issue. And at the time, there had not been a lot of development. It was very, very few, actual units being built each year. And so at the time, the city council was grappling with a growth limiting program or ordinance that they were trying to pass. And so my board said, this is our number one goal. And we had identified at the chamber housing as the single largest impediment to economic vitality in our region, and particularly in Ventura, because most of our housing stock is very old until just very recently. So we worked with our council members to try and explain kind of where the chamber was, why this was a significant business issue. We worked with our members, who many of them, larger companies, the hospitals, even the school district, were challenged by trying to recruit and retain employees because they didn't have available housing or affordable housing, either way, workforce housing. And so we identified several things within kind of the development or process that needed to change. And so we worked with council. We started kind of pitching this, we need to streamline the development process. So the city council came up with a report where, they studied kind of 360 degrees all of the development process and identified about 100 different areas where things needed to change. It was an independent, outside consultant that came in.
That's so unusual. The city doesn't usually hire outside consultants.
So anyhow, they came in with this report, and it was called the Matrix Report, and it went to council, and it was adopted by council. And so it's been the process of kind of untangling all of those policies that had existed that really limited growth and development throughout the years. Couple that with what's going on at the state level, where the state has finally kind of woken up and said, wait a minute, this housing crisis is huge. And unless we take some extreme actions, it's not going to get better, because there are communities like Ventura that are also resistant to building housing. And, a lot of communities, they're like, well, we'll do our share, but we don't want to, take on the bulk of the whole state's issue. So those two things coupled together, the kind of streamlining of the process through the adoption of the Matrix study recommendations, and I think the state kind of removing some of that local control has really helped to allow some of these most recent projects to go through. It certainly helped kind of shorten the process for developers here in Ventura, but it's still not a quick process by any stretch.
Well, no, and the effect of this, right, is you're trying to do, in this case, we're talking mostly about like market rate developments. You're trying to do something, and you've got loans out on this project, and it's taking months and months and months to get your stuff approved. And in the meantime, interest checks are coming due, and you don't even have a shovel in the ground.
Yep. And sometimes years. I mean, months would be actually
right.
great.
Right.
I think a lot of our developers would be thrilled with months delay. So yes, and in some cases, we've seen that the entire economic cycle has been missed, sometimes more than one economic cycle. So it's challenging to try and make sure that we're allowing the process to be thorough enough so that we're getting the right kind of development in Ventura, because we're not just like pave over Ventura. That's not what anyone wants, right? We want meaningful development that's going to serve our community. And the chamber has said it's the lack of available housing at all levels. So really we need affordable all the way up to luxury. Famously, a few years back, the founder of Trade Desk, Jeff Green, he used to live and work in Ventura, but he was, interested in, obviously a luxury house, had to move outside of Ventura to find that. We don't have a lot of that executive level luxury housing in Ventura.
Well, no, we don't, and you do see, unfortunately, some of the new single family homes that are being built are of that variety, and it's cool that those folks are finding homes. Like, don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but what I hear from developers is that to build like smaller single family homes for like your quote unquote like average like working class folks, because of the environment that they're building in, between the cost of entitlement, permitting, and then if you can somehow navigate that minefield and get it all permitted and entitled, find the labor, which is another thing. It's hard to make those type of projects pencil out here.
Yes.
That's a problem.
Well, and you add in some of the unique impediments that we have here in Ventura, and it adds even more to the cost of housing and to the difficulty of housing.
Like SOAR.
Oh, well, SOAR is one, sure. There's net zero water. There's a number of different, I think, challenges that we have here in Ventura.
Well, I think that's a good segue there. Let's talk about some net zero. Walk us through this program and where the conversation started, how we got to where we are today.
Yeah, so the conversation really started with, the fact that in Ventura in California and much of California, we're in kind of this arid climate where we are prone to drought and multiple years of drought, sustained drought.
And we do a lot of ag also.
Correct, right. So you have those two things coupled together, and water is always kind of at the top of the list of, do we have enough water? And of course, here in Ventura, we have stages of drought and stages of water availability. And so if we get to a specific stage where we're in a drought, we don't have the water available, all development stops because we don't have the water, right? So Ventura tried to say, hey, wait a minute, we keep going through these, wet and dry cycles.
It's like boom and bust.
Yeah, and the dry cycles just feel like they're getting longer and more extreme. So, with some good foresight, I think our Ventura Water Department said, we need to take some control over this. Now, for years, decades, more than 20 years, we've had access and we pay for rights to state water. But we don't have any way of getting state water to Ventura. There's no pipeline that runs to connect.
Wait, rewind. For years, we've been paying for how much is years? How long is this?
More than 20.
We've been paying into something that we get no benefit from.
Right. So what happens is we pay for these water rights, which we can't use. So then we sell them on the open market for pennies on the dollar. The idea is, and for years, Ventura has wanted to connect into state water, and that project is now finally underway, and it should be complete by 2025, so that we'll be able to finally access that water. Now, the challenge with that is California is also, drought state as well. So when California has extra water, that's when those allocations are given out, right? So every year they determine based on the amount of available water what that allocation amount will be. So we have up to 10,000 acre feet. Generally, it's about 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 acre feet that would be available. So we will finally be able to access that, which is great. But because of the delays in doing the state water, interconnect or tie-in, obviously nothing gets less expensive to build the longer you wait. So that project went from probably about a $25 million project to, about $52 million.
Interesting. How does that tie in with the Water Pure project?
So they're separate. They're separate projects. However, the Ventura Water Pure is, Ventura Water and our city's way of saying, let's secure future water that's more predictable and that's more, sustainable, that we can count on that to be there regardless of what happens at the state. Because typically when we would need the water the most from the state is when everybody else needs the water from the state and they don't have it. So the idea of Ventura Water Pure, which is the reverse osmosis, would create new water for us. And so they kind of went through this process quite a few years ago. It was approved, I believe, back in 2016. Back then, it was an expensive project. It was about $300 million. And fast forward to 2024, and the price tag has continued to go up, and it's about $552 million now.
Like
Half
like
a billion dollars.
like
Yeah.
cumulatively, that's the price.
That's the price tag, yes,
Okay, that's
for just the Ventura Water Pure.
and where are they finding the money for that?
Well, it's interesting. So that gets back to our net zero conversation. So they did a rate study, and the rates for
With a
water.
consultant?
Yes, with a consultant. I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah.
And so the rates did go up, and it was a tiered structure rate increase, which was significant. But the city said, hey, we can't just count on our ratepayers to bear the burden of all of this. So we need to figure out a way to pay for this, get it built. And so they decided to put into effect what they're calling net zero, where any development would either have to supply their own water rights. So for instance, if it was an ag parcel that had water rights, they could, as long as it was net zero, whatever is being built the use was not more than what those water rights are, which most people don't have that, right?
Well, that was going to be my question. Most people don't have a well.
They don't have water
on their
rights, yeah.
property.
So in general, if you don't have that, then you have to pay a fee to pay into this net zero to help fund this project. And
So it's like an impact fee.
it is, yes. And the fees are quite substantial. So a couple of examples, and this is for residential, commercial, any development. So there was a project, the Willows project, which is the apartment community that's currently, I believe they've just opened on Johnson Drive right there at North Bank. And that was undeveloped parcel of land. So they were the very first development that paid into net zero once it was approved. And they paid about $2.1 million in net zero water fees for that.
And they only have to pay it like once?
Yes, you pay it once,
okay.
and then fortunately that's not an annual fee.
Right.
So, but the challenge with that is, we also, it's not only availability of housing here in Ventura, it's also the affordability of housing here in Ventura. And so you don't make housing more affordable by making it more expensive.
Right.
And a $2.1 million fee just goes straight to the bottom line, right? That has to be
No, they're going to have to
penciled out.
It out on what the rents are going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, because the market rate development,
Yes.
There's a goal here to make a profit.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is.
Well, and just last week at council, they were looking at an affordable, 100% affordable apartment community that's going to be, it's proposed for Telegraph Road. And their fee is about $384,000 for a 55-unit apartment complex, 100% affordable.
Wow. So let's talk about that. Recently, Ventura has had the distinction in the national news of being the least affordable place in the country, or Ventura County, I guess I should say specifically, is the least affordable place in the country to buy a home. And I wanted to make a distinction there. That doesn't mean it's the most expensive, because there's stuff like in the Bay Area that's more expensive, but folks make more money up there. So when we're talking about, building affordable housing, and I mean like little a and capital A, because like affordable housing for our listeners is an actual like legal term. It doesn't just mean like it's affordable. It's 30% or less of your income, or what's the other one, like 80% or less of median area income, depending on the type of development. What can we do? This ties in with like RENA numbers, and we have requirements that we're required to do by the government. We're required to zone for certain amounts of housing, but then you have these insane impact fees and other things that make these developments very nearly impossible. It's almost like when you were a kid and you would tell your mom, oh yeah, I'll do that in a minute. And you know very well that you have no intention of doing it. Like what do we do here?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, there is increased pressure from the state for municipalities to build what they're supposed to be building to help solve this housing crisis. I think even just this last week, there was an article in the LA Times about fees. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that, and a lot more of the state pushing down mandates to the city saying, okay, nope, you can't do that, to limit, because the cities get creative, right? It's like, hey, we want control over what's happening in our community. And so they're continuing to kind of try and find ways around it. I know that one of the most common things that we hear at council meetings or planning commission meetings when a housing development comes up is, we don't have a housing crisis. And when I look around the room at the folks that are saying this, I have to kind of check myself, because to them, there is no housing crisis, right? They've owned their home for 30 plus years. It's probably paid off. Their kids have moved out of the house. They live by themselves in their 3 or 4 bedroom home.
Right. No, I mean, I get that, but it's like if I don't have to be sick to necessarily see everyone else coughing
Right.
and recognize there's a problem.
Right. And I think that's part of the challenge that we have in Ventura is this narrative in the community that all development is bad, that we don't want development, or this, I don't mind housing, but I just don't want it here because it's going to impact my neighborhood or it's going to create more traffic. And, I think it's about a housing and jobs balance. You mentioned earlier the fact that, we may not be the most expensive, but we are the least affordable. And part of that is because of our job space. We are in Ventura, a tourist town. Most of our jobs are tourism-based jobs, which are the lowest paying sector of jobs. So really trying to focus on building and attracting and maintaining head of household jobs, higher wage jobs, where someone can have a career here in Ventura. Part of the challenge is about 60% of our workforce drives out of the city to work, which to me, that's also an environmental challenge, right? You don't want all of those extra cars on the road creating traffic and creating pollution going up either to Santa Barbara or down to LA or over to Santa Clarita or further into the valley. I would much rather have a healthy jobs housing balance right here in Ventura so that people can live and work in their community. I think you get a better community that way as well.
I would agree with all of that. And I would say, another thing that I've noticed about Ventura and Ventura County is that it is geographically very large, on the map. And so, in conversations I've had with people, we have a decent public transportation infrastructure, but we struggle on that proverbial last mile. And in a place like Ventura, that's the most important mile.
Yeah.
So I think, improving our transportation infrastructure is going to be part of the equation. Let me ask you this. So, you hear a lot about the downtown in Ventura, and since COVID, what is it, Main Street that's been closed?
Main Street. Mm-hmm.
And you're hearing some folks kind of getting fired up about opening that back up, but you have a lot of opinions the other way. And I don't even want to make it sound like there's two opinions, because you get a lot of opinions when you talk to people about this.
It's true.
What are your thoughts on how having it closed has been the last few years, and what this effort means for businesses in that part of town?
Yeah, I think it's really kind of so personally, I will say I love Main Street moves because I love the idea of being able to go downtown, particularly on a weekend, sunny weather. You're walking downtown, you run into people you stop, you shop.
It's awesome.
You grab a drink, you go out and get something to eat. It's a lot of fun, right? It's a very social kind of experiment. That said, this last 2 years, we've had a significant amount of rain in Ventura, more so than I think any other time that I've lived here, certainly, and I think it's been record levels of rain. So we know that in Ventura, when it rains, people don't go out. Main Street is not busy when it's rainy. And so I think that some of those businesses are concerned because they've seen a little bit of a decline in the number of, feet on the street, if you will. So I think that, there is some concern there. I'm not certain whether that the decline in number of people downtown is really because of the closure of Main Street, or if it's because of kind of the wet weather we've had or other potential economic factors. So I do think that in this case, you kind of have to let the free market decide. If businesses feel like this is still valuable to them, most of our businesses, especially the restaurants downtown, were able to really benefit from this during COVID. And I was always amazed when I moved here 9 years ago. We're in a beach community where it's sunny almost all the time, beautiful weather, and there's hardly any place to eat outside.
Right.
You go inside to eat, and it's like, wait a minute, why aren't there, patio dining opportunities and rooftop restaurants and things like that? And there just aren't a lot of those here in Ventura. So it wasn't until they closed Main Street down and allowed businesses to kind of spill out into the parklets that happened. So I'm hopeful that we'll have some sort of blended, program at some point, but I do think it needs to be market driven.
So I was hanging out with you Friday night downtown, and we were talking about the city kind of wants to get paid for those parking spaces, though.
Yeah.
And their number that they've come in with a consultant,
Yeah.
it seems a little high.
Yeah.
How are businesses in downtown reacting to that proposal?
Well, I don't know that we know the answer to that yet, right? Especially, restaurants and retail downtown, they are focused on kind of what's in front of them right now and making sure that they're serving their customers and make sure that their doors and tables and whatnot are filled. I don't know that they have really even realized what's coming as far as that goes. I know there have been a number of discussions about parking downtown. One of the consistent things that we hear from businesses downtown is we need more parking. Parking is and can be a challenge. I personally go downtown. I find parking, yes, there are times when you have to circle a little bit or maybe go from one lot to another.
I saw you just luck into a spot the other night, literally the first spot available.
I have good parking karma. I don't know. But I mean, I've definitely, parked in other places and walked in and, it's fine. It's a very close area. So that doesn't generally bother me. But I certainly understand for someone with more limited mobility, trying to park close to the location where they're trying to go is important. And I do think we need to increase, whether Main Street opens or closes, increase the opportunity for accessible parking.
So when you talk to businesses across the city or, in other parts of the county, and y'all are talking about their number one or, top three challenges that they're facing, maybe not necessarily in a particular moment, but sort of chronic challenges that just can't seem to get it licked. What are the sorts of things that you hear from these guys?
Yeah, so kind of three buckets. So first bucket is employees. How do we find qualified employees that are going to stick around? That ties directly to housing and housing availability, because what we see a lot of, if it's a company that's recruiting from Trade Desk that recruits worldwide, they recruit someone and they come in, there's a little bit of that sticker shock of, whoa, how much am I paying for housing? And is housing available? I mentioned I moved here back in 2015. And when I moved, there was less than a 2% vacancy rate. And so good luck finding someplace. I had one weekend to come in and try and find a place to live. I was looking for a rental at the time. And I spent, 3 days scouring Ventura.
For our listeners, a healthy market's about 5% vacancy. So 2% is basically no vacancy.
Yeah. And I'm one person. Imagine a company that's hiring, multiple, right? Or the hospital that brings in new residents.
Or if you're bringing a whole family with you.
Or if you're bringing a whole family, yeah. It's challenging. So, yes, so housing is a big one. And then the third one is for anybody who's doing any sort of, let's say your business is growing and you've got a happy little business going on there. You need to expand. And So you move, you find a new location, and then you have to go through the permitting process. There are a lot of delays that folks have experienced during that permitting process. So those are kind of the three key areas that I hear a lot of. And again, 1 and 2, the housing and the employment are really closely tied together. The other thing we've seen a lot of, being at the chamber, we have, chambers are historically, kind of the small business of the community. And so we have a lot of small business owners. Oftentimes they are, part of a couple, right? So their spouse may work in tech. They work for one of the tech companies, either here in Ventura or somewhere in the county. Well, they have spent, 2, 3, 4, 5 years there. They're ready for that next step in their career. In order to move up, they have to move out. We just don't have the volume of opportunities that other areas have. So over the years, we've lost quite a few members, small business members, because their spouse got a promotion and had to move to either Bay Area or, Valley,
somewhere else.
LA, somewhere else. Yeah. So then that business, we not only lose that, brain trust for the workforce, we also lose that small business that supports our community.
That is difficult, but there's a lot to be excited about in Ventura. You look at the way we responded to COVID and the pandemic. Even though we have challenges that we've discussed this morning, the ball is getting moved forward. The needle is moving. We have a really great board of supervisors that just got 3/5 of them just got reelected. So what are you excited about in the next 2, 3, 4 years?
Yeah, I think we're in kind of a unique spot, right? We've had a pretty much a changeover in philosophy on the Board of Supervisors. Our Ventura City Council is very business friendly. And so it's really time to kind of unravel some of those challenges and move forward. And I think we're starting to see that. In Ventura, we've also had some leadership challenges. And so we are now on track. In fact, just this last Monday, you were at a reception that the chamber hosted for our city leadership. Our new city manager, Bill Ayub. We have a brand new assistant city manager, Carlene Saxton. We have a brand new community development director, Rachel Diamond.
She's awesome.
We're really excited about the energy that these folks are bringing and kind of that collaborative approach that they have, not just with the community, but internally to get things done. And we're seeing a much more customer service focus at City Hall, which I think has been lacking for a long time.
So the turbulent experience that folks have had at City Hall, either on the political side or the constituent services side, that's all settling down.
I certainly hope so. I see really good signs of reasons why we should be optimistic there. And that's something that I know you work on, Chamber works on. There are a number of different organizations. And I think that's a part of it too, is, when I first came here, there wasn't a lot of collaboration between different groups and the city. And I've seen through, for sure the last 5 to 7 years, there's a lot more collaboration. And I think that that's one of the bright spots of COVID. When COVID hit, there was everybody was kind of in a panic. And a lot of these groups started getting even closer together and forging very strong relationships like, hey, I can help this person with this part of the problem, but I need you to help them with this part of the problem.
You had to be creative and innovative in the way you served your members, your customers, whoever is on your radar.
And so it became this kind of, I've got your back kind of thing, and we're not going to let anybody fail. And so I'm really excited to see that because I think it makes our community even more supportive.
Well, Stephanie, I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about anything that you want to promote for the chamber right now.
Well, the chamber always has a lot going on, Rob. We have our Business Expo, which is coming up May 16th. That is a expo where we have our members kind of display what they do, and it's an opportunity to go out and meet businesses. It's B2B, but it's also B2C, so business to business, business to consumer. So for those folks out there that are looking for an attorney or a painter or a dentist. We have those all at the expo. It's a fun time as well. It's at the Four Point Sheraton.
And the public can come to that. It's not members only.
Absolutely, not members only. Yeah. We also do something at the last Friday of every month, which we call the Lunch Mob, where we go out to a chamber member restaurant and have lunch. And it's just anyone's welcome. You come in, you drop in, you sit down, you meet some new people, you maybe try a new restaurant, and you support a business here in Ventura. So all of our events are available on the chamber website. We have a calendar of events page, which is also a community calendar. So other organizations post their events there as well. And you can find all of that information at venturachamber.com.
Well, you're awesome. You do a great job. You're doing great for Ventura, and I really appreciate you coming and giving us some time today.
Well, right back at you, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Yes, ma'am. Well, you'll come back. You'll come back. Thank you to our audience for joining us today. We really appreciate you giving us some time. We hope you've learned something. Remember to like, share, and subscribe if you like what we're doing. Until next time, this is Rob Leatherwood, Ventura County Coastal Association of Realtors, Stephanie Caldwell, Ventura Chamber. Thank you.